Olivia Bennet, 29, stood frozen in her wedding dress as her mother's words hit her like a truck. "We're passing the car his parents gave you to your sister." The champagne glass almost slipped from her trembling fingers. What should have been the happiest day of her life suddenly felt like the first domino in a chain of betrayals that would unravel 15 years of family secrets. Little did she know that her mother's seemingly innocent announcement would expose the web of lies that had defined the Bennets for decades. Before I dive deeper into how my picture-perfect family imploded on what should have been the happiest day of my life, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that subscribe button if you enjoy family drama with unexpected twists. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma finally caught up to those who betrayed me. The Bennets were the epitome of the American dream in our small Connecticut town. Dad was a successful investment banker. Mom ran the most prestigious event planning business in 3 counties. My younger sister Abigail was the high school valedictorian headed to Yale, and I had just finished my master's in architecture with a promising career ahead. From the outside, we were perfect. The Christmas card family everyone envied. I met Ryan during my final year of college. He came from old money, but was refreshingly down to earth. His parents, the Montgomerys, welcomed me into their family immediately. They were generous to a fault. Too generous, my mother would say with a tight smile. When they gifted me a brand new Audi for graduating with honors, I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Mom suggested I sell it and invest the money, but I loved that car. It represented independence and the promise of my new life with Ryan. Our engagement came as no surprise to anyone. After 3 years together, Ryan proposed during a weekend trip to his family's lake house. The Montgomerys were ecstatic. My parents seemed pleased but reserved. Mom immediately took over wedding planning, asserting that as a professional, she would ensure everything was perfect. I was happy to let her take the reins, too busy with my new job at a prestigious architecture firm to worry about centerpieces and catering. "Olivia, dear, the Montgomerys are very traditional," Mom said during one planning session. "We need to make sure everything meets their standards." What I didn't notice then was how she emphasized their wealth at every turn, how she began suggesting more expensive venues, more elaborate floral arrangements. The wedding budget kept growing, and each time I expressed concern, Mom would say, "The Montgomerys offered to contribute more. Don't worry about it." And I didn't worry. I didn't see how Mom's eyes lit up when Ryan's parents offered to pay for the honeymoon, a 3-week tour of Europe's architectural wonders. I didn't notice how she began having lunch with Ryan's mother, forming what I thought was a genuine friendship. I didn't see the calculator behind her smile. 2 months before the wedding, Abigail moved back home after her freshman year at Yale. She'd always been the golden child, smarter, more ambitious, more willing to follow Mom's carefully plotted life plan. While I had pursued architecture against Mom's wishes for me to join her event planning business, Abigail was studying business economics, poised to take over the family enterprise someday. What I also didn't see was how often Abigail began spending time with the Montgomerys. "They're practically family now," she'd say, when I found her having dinner at their house without me. Besides, I'm helping Mom coordinate with them about the wedding. The week before the wedding, tensions in our house were running high. Mom was obsessively checking details. Dad was unusually quiet, and Abigail was constantly on her phone, smiling at texts she wouldn't share. I attributed it all to wedding stress and focused on enjoying my last days as a single woman. "You should wear Grandma's pearls," Mom insisted, the night before the rehearsal dinner. "The Montgomerys will be wearing family heirlooms. We need to show that we have traditions too." "I was planning to wear the necklace Ryan gave me," I replied. Mom's expression hardened for just a moment before she smiled. "Of course, dear. It's your wedding." That night, I overheard Mom and Abigail whispering in the kitchen. "Are you sure about this?" Abigail asked. "Absolutely," Mom replied. Trust me, it's for the best. The Montgomerys won't suspect a thing until it's done. I should have confronted them then. I should have demanded to know what they were planning. But I convinced myself it was just another wedding surprise, perhaps a special toast or gift. I had no idea that they were orchestrating something that would change all our lives forever. The day before my wedding, Ryan's parents hosted a lavish lunch for both families. Everything was perfect. The food, the champagne, the genuine warmth between our families. Or so I thought. Looking back, I should have noticed how Mom kept steering the conversation toward the Montgomerys' generosity, how she kept emphasizing how lucky I was to be marrying into such a wealthy family. "We couldn't be more grateful for everything you've done for Olivia," Mom said, raising her glass, "and we want you to know that we consider you family now." Ryan's mother beamed. "We feel the same way about all of you. We're not losing a son, we're gaining a daughter." As we left, Ryan's father pulled me aside. "Olivia, we have something special for you and Ryan, a wedding gift. But we want to give it to you privately tomorrow before the ceremony." I hugged him, tears in my eyes, completely unaware that in less than 24 hours, that gift would become the catalyst for exposing my family's true colors. My wedding day dawned bright and clear, the June sunshine streaming through the windows of the bridal suite at Connecticut's most exclusive country club. My bridesmaids bustled around me, fixing my hair, helping with my makeup, popping champagne far too early in the morning. Mom had spared no expense. The flowers were spectacular, the venue immaculate, the dress custom-made by a designer who normally had a 2-year waiting list. "The Montgomerys are here," Mom announced, sweeping into the room in her mother-of-the-bride outfit that had cost more than my first semester of college. "They want to give you their gift before the ceremony." I followed her to a private room where Ryan's parents waited, both of them beaming with pride and genuine affection. Ryan wasn't there. Tradition dictated he couldn't see me before the ceremony. Olivia, Ryan's father, said, taking my hands in his, "You've made our son happier than we've ever seen him. We wanted to give you something special to start your life together." He handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a key with a familiar logo. "We know how much you love your career," Ryan's mother explained, "so we bought you a studio space in downtown Hartford. It's yours, not Ryan's, not both of yours. Just yours, to start your own architecture firm whenever you're ready." I couldn't speak. This was beyond generous. It was life-changing. Commercial real estate in Hartford was expensive, and they had given me the foundation to eventually become my own boss. I struggled to find words. "Too much," my mother finished for me, her voice tight despite her smile. "You are far too generous." Something in her tone made Ryan's parents exchange a glance. "Not at all," Ryan's father said firmly. "We believe in Olivia's talent." When they left, I turned to my mother, still in shock. "Can you believe this? My own firm someday." Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, they can afford to be generous. Old money always is." She paused, then added, "Speaking of gifts, we've decided to give Abigail your Audi." What, I blinked, trying to process her words. "Well, you'll have 2 cars now with Ryan, and Abigail needs a reliable vehicle for her internship this summer. We're passing the car his parents gave you to your sister. It makes perfect sense." Before I could respond, she continued, "Besides, it was really a gift to the family through you. The Montgomerys understand how these things work." "Mom, that car was a graduation gift to me personally." "You can't just Olivia, she cut me off. Don't be selfish on your wedding day. What's yours is now Ryan's, and what's his is yours. You'll have plenty. Abigail is still building her life." Something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't about the car, it was about the presumption, the calculation behind it. For the first time, I saw clearly how my mother viewed my relationship with Ryan as a family investment. "Did you ask the Montgomerys about this?" I demanded. Mom's expression hardened slightly. "Of course not." It's our family business. Now we should finish getting you ready. The photographer wants pre-ceremony shots in 20 minutes. She left before I could argue further, the door clicking shut behind her with quiet finality. I stood alone in the ornate room, the key to my future studio clutched in one hand, the knowledge that something was deeply wrong clutched in the other. As I rejoined my bridesmaids, I noticed Abigail texting furiously in the corner, a smug smile on her face. When she saw me looking, she quickly pocketed her phone. "Who are you texting?" I asked. "Just some friends from Yale," she replied too quickly. "They're excited to see pictures of the wedding." I knew my sister well enough to recognize when she was lying, but before I could press further, the wedding coordinator arrived to usher us toward the ceremony. "Your mother has organized the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen," she gushed. "You're so lucky to have someone with her expertise in the family." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I prepared to walk down the aisle to Ryan, doubts clouded what should have been perfect happiness. The car incident was a symptom of something larger, something I had been blind to for years. My family saw my marriage not as my happy beginning, but as their strategic advantage. Standing outside the ceremony space, waiting for the music to signal my entrance, I made a decision. After the honeymoon, Ryan and I would establish clear boundaries with my family. No more presumptions, no more calculations, no more treating us like a financial opportunity. Little did I know it was already too late. The seeds of betrayal had been planted long ago, and they were about to bear bitter fruit. The ceremony passed in a blur of emotions. Joy at seeing Ryan waiting for me at the altar, his eyes filled with tears. Nervousness as I recited vows I had written myself. And underlying it all, a nagging unease about my mother's earlier words. But as we were pronounced husband and wife, I pushed those concerns aside. This was my day, our day, and nothing would spoil it. The reception was in full swing when I first noticed something odd. Mom was huddled in a corner with Ryan's father, their expressions serious documents spread on a cocktail table between them. When they saw me looking, Mom quickly gathered the papers and offered a brilliant smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just finalizing some wedding details, she called over the music. "Go enjoy your first dance." I let Ryan lead me to the dance floor, but kept glancing back at them. "What is my mother doing with your dad?" I asked him. Ryan shrugged. "Probably something about the venue payment." "Don't worry about it tonight." But as the evening progressed, more strange interactions caught my attention. Dad was drinking heavily, unusual for him, and barely making eye contact with the Montgomerys. Abigail kept disappearing for long stretches, returning with flushed cheeks and mussed hair. And Mom seemed to be everywhere at once, managing not just the event but the guests themselves, steering conversations and monitoring interactions with calculated precision. During the cake cutting, Ryan's mother embraced me warmly. "We're so happy to officially welcome you to the family, Olivia." "Thank you," I said sincerely. "Your gift this morning was incredibly generous." She looked confused for a moment. "The studio space?" "That was just part of it, dear." "Didn't your mother tell you about the rest?" Before she could continue, Mom appeared as if summoned, champagne flutes in hand. "Time for toasts," she announced, effectively ending our conversation. Later, as I changed into my going-away outfit, Abigail helped me out of my dress. "You know," she said casually, "Mom has been working on this wedding for more than just the last year." "What do you mean?" she shrugged. "Just that she's been planning a Montgomery connection for a long time. Ever since you mentioned Ryan's family name in your sophomore year, the implications of her words sent a chill through me." "Are you saying Mom pushed me toward Ryan because of his family's money?" Abigail's expression turned defensive. "Don't be dramatic. I'm just saying she recognized an opportunity and helped things along." "What's wrong with that? We all benefit." "We all benefit," I echoed. "This is my marriage, Abby, not a business merger." She rolled her eyes. Oh, please, like you didn't know what you were doing when you brought him home. The Montgomerys are loaded, and now we're connected to them forever. I stared at my sister, a stranger in that moment. I love Ryan. That's why I married him. Sure, and the family fortune is just a happy bonus, she said dismissively. Anyway, thanks for the car. The keys are already in my purse. I grabbed her arm as she turned to leave. What exactly has Mom been planning, Abigail? What don't I know? For a moment, something like guilt flickered across her face. Then her expression hardened. Ask her yourself. But not tonight. You'll ruin everything. She pulled away and left me alone with my racing thoughts. What had my mother done? What was she still doing? And how deep did this deception go? I rejoined the reception, plastering on a smile as guests wished us well. Ryan sensed my tension but attributed it to wedding day stress. As we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, Mom and Dad stood with the Montgomerys waving goodbye like the perfect in-laws. But now I could see the calculation behind my mother's smile, the discomfort in my father's eyes, the smugness radiating from Abigail. Ready for 3 weeks in Europe, Mrs. Montgomery Ryan whispered as we climbed into the limo. I nodded, forcing enthusiasm I no longer felt. Can't wait. As the limo pulled away, I looked back to see Mom already engaged in deep conversation with Ryan's father, her hand gesturing emphatically while he nodded. Whatever she was selling, he was buying. And something told me the price would ultimately be paid by Ryan and me. During our flight to Paris, I couldn't stop thinking about Abigail's words and my mother's behavior. I scrolled through my phone looking at family photos with new eyes. There it was, in every picture with Ryan's family, my mother's calculated positioning always next to the wealthiest or most influential person. The way she'd subtly encouraged my relationship from the beginning, suggesting dates at venues where the Montgomerys might be arranging accidental meetings with them. You seem distracted, Ryan said, taking my hand. What's on your mind? I couldn't burden him with my suspicions. Not yet, not without proof. Just tired, I lied. It's been a big day. The biggest, he agreed. But the best is yet to come. If only I had known then how wrong he was. The best wasn't coming, the worst was. And it had been in motion since long before I walked down the aisle. Paris should have been magical. The City of Light, with its romantic architecture and rich history, was a dream destination for any architect. Ryan had planned our itinerary meticulously, including private tours of buildings normally closed to the public. Under different circumstances, I would have been ecstatic. Instead, I found myself going through the motions, my mind constantly returning to the disturbing revelations from our wedding day. On our third night in Paris, I woke to find Ryan's side of the bed empty. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Concerned, I got up and found him in the suite's living room, his laptop open, his expression troubled in the blue glow of the screen. Ryan, what's wrong? He jumped slightly, then sighed. I couldn't sleep. I got an email from my father that didn't make sense, so I started looking into some things. What things? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. He hesitated. Financial things. Olivia, did you know your mother asked my parents for a loan 6 months ago? A substantial one. The knot tightened. What? No, that's impossible. My parents don't need money. According to my father, your mother claimed they were having cash flow issues with the event planning business. My parents gave her $75,000 as a family loan with very generous terms. I sank onto the couch beside him. There must be a mistake. Mom's business is successful. She's always booked solid. That's what I thought too. Ryan turned the laptop so I could see the screen. So I started looking deeper. Your mother's company has been struggling for over a year. She's taken out multiple loans, maxed out business credit cards. The wedding venue, it wasn't paid in full like she claimed. There's still a $30,000 balance outstanding. How do you know all this? His expression was pained. Because I have access to my parents' financial accounts, they added me years ago for estate planning purposes. I can see the transfers, the loan agreements, everything. My head was spinning. So, Mom borrowed money from your parents. That's embarrassing, but it's more than that, Olivia. Ryan pulled up another document. This is a draft of a business proposal your mother sent to my father yesterday. She's suggesting a merger of her event planning business with my mother's charitable foundation. But it's not really a merger, it's a bailout. She's basically asking my parents to absorb her failing business, retain her as the director with a substantial salary, and take on all the debt. The room seemed to tilt. She sent this during our wedding reception. Apparently, she's been discussing it with them for weeks, but this formal proposal went out yesterday. My father's email was asking me if I knew anything about it. I thought of the papers I'd seen them reviewing at the reception. Mom's evasive explanation. She told me they were wedding details. Ryan rubbed his face tiredly. There's more. According to these documents, your parents remortgaged their house to pay for Abigail's first year at Yale. They're financially underwater, Olivia. And it looks like your mother has been. Well, there's no nice way to say this. Using our relationship to solve their money problems. The truth hit me like a physical blow. The elaborate wedding, the increasing involvement with the Montgomerys, the constant emphasis on their wealth, it had all been part of my mother's scheme. Even giving my car to Abigail made a twisted kind of sense now. It wasn't just entitlement, it was financial necessity. They couldn't afford to buy her a new one. Did your parents know? When they gave us the studio space, Ryan shook his head. I don't think so. That gift was genuine. They believe in your talent. But they had no idea how calculated your mother's involvement has been. I thought of all the times Mom had inserted herself into our relationship, the accidental meetings she'd arranged, the way she'd taken over wedding planning. Had anything been genuine? Had she seen me as a daughter at all, or merely as a pawn in her financial strategy? There's one more thing, Ryan said hesitantly. According to my father, your mother suggested that since we're family now, it would be appropriate for my parents to help with Abigail's Yale tuition. Tears of humiliation burned in my eyes. Ryan, I swear I didn't know any of this. I had no idea my family was in financial trouble, let alone that my mother was using our marriage this way. He pulled me close. I know you had nothing to do with this, but we need to figure out what to do. We stayed up the rest of the night poring over financial documents Ryan could access remotely, piecing together the extent of my mother's deception. The picture that emerged was devastating. The Bennett's perfect facade had been crumbling for years, propped up by loans and credit, fueled by my mother's determination to maintain appearances at any cost. What do we do now? I asked, as dawn broke over Paris. Do we confront them, cut them off, pretend we don't know? Ryan took my hands. This is your family, Olivia. I'll support whatever decision you make, but my parents deserve to know the truth about what your mother is trying to do. I nodded numb with shock and betrayal. We need to tell them. All of it. And then, I don't know. I can't just pretend everything is normal with my family after this. As the sun rose over the Seine, casting golden light across a city I could no longer appreciate, I made a decision. Our honeymoon would be cut short. We would return to Connecticut and confront my family with what we'd discovered. No more secrets, no more manipulation, no more using Ryan and his family as financial safety nets. I still remember that morning in Paris, watching the sunrise from our hotel room, the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted completely was using you? Someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally? It's a special kind of heartbreak, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I continue this twisted family saga, take a second to hit that like button if you've ever had to confront a loved one about their betrayal, and subscribe to catch the next part where everything comes crashing down. The confrontation that followed makes most family reunions look like a picnic. We cut our honeymoon short, canceling the remaining European destinations and booking the next available flight back to Connecticut. During the long journey home, Ryan and I strategized. He would speak with his parents first, showing them the evidence we'd compiled and warning them about my mother's proposal. Then together, we would confront my family. I vacillated between crushing hurt and searing anger. How could my mother have done this? How could she have seen my happiness, my love for Ryan, as nothing more than a financial opportunity? Even worse, how could she have kept the family's financial struggles from me while burdening me with the unconscious role of family savior? We landed in New York on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the gloomy weather matching my mood perfectly. Ryan's parents met us at the airport, confused by our early return, but supportive as always. "We need to talk," Ryan told them gravely. "Not here." We drove in silence to their Connecticut home, a beautiful colonial that had been in the Montgomery family for generations. Once settled in the library, Ryan connected his laptop to a larger screen and began walking his parents through what we'd discovered. Their reactions progressed from confusion to disbelief to hurt anger. Ryan's mother kept shaking her head as if denying what she was seeing could make it untrue. "We thought she was our friend," she said finally. "We welcomed her all of your family with open arms." The worst part, Ryan's father added, is that we would have helped if they were in financial trouble. They didn't need to. To use Olivia and Ryan this way. His words brought fresh tears to my eyes. He was right. The Montgomerys were generous people who helped others without hesitation. My mother's elaborate deception had been unnecessary as well as unethical. "What do you want to do?" Ryan asked his parents. They exchanged a long look, communicating in that silent way of couples who have spent decades together. "We'll handle the business proposal," his father said firmly. Politely, but clearly decline. As for the rest, "Oh, that's up to Olivia. They're her family." All eyes turned to me. I need to confront them. I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Today, they need to know that we know everything." An hour later, we arrived at my parents' house. I'd called ahead asking them to make sure Abigail was there too. "Family emergency," I'd said curtly when Mom pressed for details. They were waiting in the living room, expressions ranging from concerned dad to annoyed Abigail to calculatedly neutral Mom. "What's this about?" Mom asked, eyeing Ryan and his parents with barely concealed alarm. "I thought you were in Italy this week." "Change of plans," I said coldly, setting up Ryan's laptop on the coffee table. We needed to come home when we discovered some interesting reading material. For the next 20 minutes, we laid out everything: the loans, the remortgaged house, the tuition struggles, and most damning of all, the calculated way my mother had used my relationship to solve the family's financial problems. With each revelation, my father seemed to physically shrink, while Abigail's expression shifted from dismissive to horrified. Mom, however, remained remarkably composed. When we finished, she smoothed her skirt and looked directly at Ryan's parents. "I admit, I should have been more transparent about our financial situation," she said calmly. "But is it really so shocking that I would try to secure advantages for my family? Isn't that what parents do? The Montgomerys have more money than they could spend in 3 lifetimes. Sharing some of that wealth with Olivia's family seems perfectly reasonable to me." Ryan's father leaned forward. "Asking for help is reasonable, Claire. Manipulating your daughter's relationship for financial gain is not. There's a world of difference." "Manipulating," Mom scoffed. "I simply encouraged a beneficial match. Olivia and Ryan love each other. Everyone wins." "Mom," I interjected, my voice shaking with rage, "you used me. You used my wedding day to try to secure loans and business deals. You gave away my car without even asking me. You've been planning how to benefit from my relationship since the day I met Ryan." She had the audacity to look wounded. "I've only ever wanted what's best for this family." Someone had to take responsibility when your father's investments went south when tuition bills came due. Someone had to maintain our standing in the community. Dad finally spoke up, his voice barely audible. Claire, stop. Just stop. It's over. He turned to me, his eyes filled with shame. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I knew about some of this, but not all. Not the extent of it. I should have put a stop to it long ago. You couldn't have, Mom snapped. You were too busy feeling sorry for yourself after your firm demoted you. Someone had to be practical. Abigail, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly stood. How could you do this? She demanded of our mother. You told me we were just accepting help that was freely offered. You said the Montgomerys wanted to assist with my tuition because they were practically family now. Mom waved a dismissive hand. They can afford it. And they would have agreed if Olivia and Ryan hadn't interfered. We're not your personal ATM, Ryan's mother said quietly, and your daughters are not pawns in your financial game. The room fell silent. The magnitude of my mother's betrayal seemed to fill the space between us, a tangible presence that made it hard to breathe. Finally, I stood. I need some air. I walked out to the backyard, the same yard where I'd played as a child, where I'd had my high school graduation party, where just 2 weeks ago we'd taken pre-wedding photos. It all felt tainted now. Ryan followed me out saying nothing, just offering his presence. After a few minutes, Abigail joined us, her eyes red from crying. I didn't know, she said. Not all of it. I swear, Olivia. Mom told me you wanted me to have the car because you'd be getting a new one from Ryan anyway. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet, but I nodded. We've all been manipulated by her. What happens now? Abigail asked, looking between Ryan and me. It was the question I'd been asking myself since that terrible night in Paris. What do you do when you discover your family's love has been conditional all along? I don't know, I admitted. But nothing will ever be the same. We rejoined the others inside. The atmosphere was funereal, as if someone had died. In a way, something had. My trust in my mother, my belief in my family's unconditional love, my understanding of my own history. We should go, Ryan's father said, standing. Claire Richard will be in touch about the outstanding loans. We expect regular repayments at market interest rates. His voice was kind but firm. The days of family generosity were over. As they moved toward the door, Mom made one last desperate attempt. Margaret, please, she said to Ryan's mother. Think about what this means for Abigail's education, for our friendship. Margaret Montgomery paused, her expression sad but resolved. We were never friends, Claire. You were just using us. The difference is, I know it now. The door closed behind them with quiet finality. I need to pack some things I told my parents. Ryan and I will be staying with his family until we figure out our next steps. Mom reached for my arm. Olivia, be reasonable. Everything I did was for you for this family. I pulled away from her touch. No, Mom. Everything you did was for yourself. You used my love for Ryan to solve your financial problems. You treated my marriage like a business transaction. There is no coming back from that. As Ryan and I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom to collect my remaining belongings, I heard my father's voice raised in anger for the first time in my memory. How could you, Claire? How could you do this to our daughters? I didn't wait to hear her response. Some betrayals are too deep for explanations to matter. The weeks following our confrontation were a blur of legal meetings, financial discussions, and emotional processing. Ryan and I moved into a small apartment near my new studio space, creating physical and emotional distance from both our families as we tried to build a life untainted by manipulation and lies. My father called daily at first, leaving voicemails full of apologies and explanations. He claimed he'd been unaware of the extent of Mom's schemes, that he'd believed her when she said the Montgomerys were freely offering their help. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet, but I saved the messages, sensing his genuine remorse. Abigail visited once, bringing the keys to my Audi with a tearful apology. I didn't understand what was really happening, she insisted. Mom told me you wanted me to have it. Did you ever stop to think about how convenient that was? I asked her. How everything always seemed to work out in your favor. She looked away. I wanted to believe we deserved it. I couldn't bring myself to fully forgive her yet, but I recognized that she too had been manipulated, albeit in different ways than me. Mom had positioned Abigail as the academic star, the one who deserved every advantage, while secretly positioning me as the family's financial salvation through my marriage. The Montgomerys were true to their word. They formally declined Mom's business proposal and restructured the existing loans with strict repayment terms. Ryan's parents remained warm toward me, making it clear they didn't blame me for my mother's actions, but the easy familial relationship we'd once enjoyed was irreparably damaged. 1 month after the confrontation, when the dust had begun to settle, I received a strange email from my father's sister, Aunt Patricia. We had never been close. She and my mother had some long-standing feud that predated my birth, but the subject line caught my attention, "What you don't know about your mother." The email was brief. "Olivia, I've heard about what happened. There are things you should know about your mother's past that might help explain, though not excuse her behavior. Call me if you want to know more." I stared at those words for a long time. Did I want to know more? Would any revelation make my mother's betrayal more palatable? After discussing it with Ryan, I decided that understanding might help with healing, even if it couldn't undo the damage. Aunt Patricia agreed to meet me at a cafe halfway between her home in Massachusetts and our apartment in Connecticut. She arrived looking much as I remembered her. Tall, angular, with the same Bennett jawline as my father, but none of the warmth. "Thank you for coming," she said, settling across from me. "I've wanted to have this conversation for years, but your mother made sure I had limited access to you and Abigail growing up." "What do you mean?" she sighed. "Claire didn't come from money, Olivia. I know she created this narrative of a respectable middle-class background, but the truth is much harsher. Her father was a gambling addict who lost everything repeatedly. Her mother worked multiple jobs to keep them housed and fed. Claire grew up in genuine poverty, sometimes not knowing where her next meal would come from. I tried to reconcile this image with my polished, perfect mother. How do you know this? Because when she first met your father, she told him the truth. I was there when she shared her background story, crying about how ashamed she was of where she came from. But once they were married, once she had secured her position in a good family, she began reinventing herself. She cut ties with her parents, changed her accent, learned to dress and behave like someone born to privilege. I shook my head in disbelief. Dad never told us any of this. She made him promise not to. She was determined that her children would never know the shame she had felt growing up, but that fear, that desperation to never return to poverty, twisted something in her. When your father's career hit trouble, when their investments failed, she panicked. "That doesn't excuse what she did," I said firmly. "No," Aunt Patricia agreed. "It doesn't, but it might explain it. Claire has spent her entire adult life terrified of returning to the poverty she escaped. She would do anything, manipulate anyone, to prevent that from happening." As I drove home from our meeting, my emotions were in turmoil. The revelation about Mom's background didn't excuse her actions, but it cast them in a different light. Her obsession with status and financial security, her determination to maintain appearances at any cost, they stemmed from deep childhood trauma. When I shared what I'd learned with Ryan, he was thoughtful. "It makes sense, but understanding doesn't mean you have to forgive Olivia. Not until you're ready, if ever." 3 days later, I received another email, this time from Abigail. "Dad told me about Mom's background. We need to talk. There's more." We met at my studio space now, slowly transforming into the architecture firm I had always dreamed of. Abigail looked terrible, pale with dark circles under her eyes. I've been doing some digging, she said without preamble, into Mom's business records. Olivia, she didn't just use your relationship with the Montgomerys to try to solve our financial problems. She's been misappropriating client funds for years, using deposits for one event to fund another, shifting money around to cover shortfalls. It's basically a Ponzi scheme. The room seemed to spin. That's illegal. She could go to prison. Abigail nodded grimly. Dad doesn't know yet. I found the records accidentally when I was looking for documentation about my tuition payments. Mom gave me access to her business accounts to help with some marketing projects last semester. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? She corrected. She's our mother, Olivia. Despite everything. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of this new betrayal. We have to tell Dad first. Then. I don't know. She needs to face consequences, but I don't want to see her in prison. The next day, we met with our father at his office, away from Mom's constant presence. When we showed him what Abigail had discovered, he aged 10 years before our eyes. I'll handle this, he said, finally his voice hollow. I'll talk to a lawyer, figure out how to make restitution to the affected clients without involving the authorities if possible. Your mother. She needs help, not punishment. 2 weeks later, everything came to a head. Dad had consulted with a financial crimes attorney and formulated a plan to quietly make restitution to Mom's clients. The Montgomerys had agreed to provide a loan to cover the shortfall with our house as collateral, a business arrangement, not a family favor. Mom, however, remained in denial. It was just creative accounting, she insisted, when confronted with the evidence. Everyone does it. It was fraud, Claire Dad said tiredly. And you're going to accept the help we're offering to fix this, or I'll have no choice but to go to the authorities myself. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother completely lose control. She screamed, she cried, she threatened and cajoled. When none of that worked, she collapsed into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 53 years. You don't understand what it's like, she whispered, to have nothing, to be nothing. You've never been nothing, Mom, I said, surprising myself by speaking up. But you've been so focused on money and status that you lost sight of what actually matters. Family, trust, love. She looked at me, then really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I thought I was protecting you, securing your future. By using me, by seeing my marriage as a financial opportunity, I didn't know how else to keep us safe, she admitted. It was the closest thing to an honest conversation we'd ever had. Not an apology, not yet, but an acknowledgement at least of the damage she had done. The path forward was neither quick nor easy. Mom agreed to attend therapy to address her deep-seated fears about financial insecurity. Dad took over her business, working with an accountant to straighten out the books and make restitution to clients. Abigail transferred from Yale to a state university with a good business program, accepting that the family could no longer afford the Ivy League tuition. As for me and Ryan, we slowly rebuilt our relationship with his parents, establishing healthy boundaries and clear expectations. I focused on my fledgling architecture firm, determined to succeed through my own talent and hard work, rather than through connections or manipulation. 6 months after our confrontation, Mom finally offered a genuine apology, not just for the car incident or the financial deceptions, but for the way she had viewed my marriage and happiness as commodities to be leveraged. It wasn't enough to fully restore our relationship, but it was a start. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, but I want you to know that I'm trying to change to be better, to see value in things beyond money and status. 1 year after our wedding, Ryan and I celebrated our anniversary with a small dinner at our new home, a modest but charming house we had purchased together without financial help from either of our families. Mom and Dad were there, sitting somewhat awkwardly with the Montgomerys. Abigail came with her new boyfriend, a kind engineering student with no family money to speak of. As I looked around the table, I realized something profound. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed my family had ultimately forced us all to confront uncomfortable truths and grow from them. Mom was learning to value relationships over finances. Dad was finding his voice and strength again. Abigail was discovering who she was outside of the golden child role. And I had found something I never knew I needed: freedom from the weight of being my family's unwitting financial savior, and the space to build a life and marriage based on love rather than calculation. When Mom raised her glass for a toast, her hand trembled slightly. "To second chances," she said, looking directly at me. "And to a daughter wise enough to demand better from her mother." It wasn't a perfect ending. Real life rarely provides those. But it was a new beginning, hard won through pain and truth. And that I decided as I clinked my glass against hers was worth celebrating. 3 years have passed since that fateful wedding day, when my mother's casual announcement about my car exposed the web of lies and manipulation that had defined our family for decades. Looking back now with the perspective that time provides, I can see that moment as both an ending and a beginning. The end of illusions and the beginning of something more genuine, if more complicated. My architecture firm is thriving now. I've developed a reputation for innovative, sustainable design, winning several awards and securing high-profile clients through my work rather than family connections. Ryan's career in environmental law has similarly flourished, and we support each other's professional growth with genuine pride rather than calculation. Mom and Dad sold their too-large house and moved to a comfortable condo living within their means for perhaps the first time in their married life. Mom still struggles sometimes with her obsession with status and financial security, but therapy has helped her understand the roots of those fears and develop healthier coping mechanisms. Dad seems happier in their simpler life, freed from the pressure of maintaining a facade he never valued as much as Mom did. Abigail graduated last year and started her own small marketing consultancy, building it client by client without shortcuts or manipulations. She and I have slowly rebuilt our sisterly bond, though there are still moments when old resentments flare. She returned the Audi to me shortly after our confrontation, but I let her keep it. I had no need for a status symbol car in my new, more authentic life. The Montgomerys remain part of our extended family circle, though, with clearer boundaries and expectations on all sides. Ryan's parents never held my mother's actions against me, understanding that I had been as much a victim of her machinations as anyone. They've become mentors to me in my career, offering advice when asked, but never using money as a means of control. As for my mother, our relationship remains a work in progress. There are days when I see genuine growth in her, when she seems to truly value connection over appearance. There are other days when old patterns emerge, and I have to step back and protect myself. I've learned that forgiveness is not a single act, but a process, one that requires honesty and accountability on both sides. The greatest lesson from this painful chapter of my life has been about the true meaning of family. Blood ties matter, yes, but so does respect, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do for those we love is to demand better from them, to refuse to participate in destructive patterns, even when they're wrapped in the language of family loyalty. My wedding day didn't turn out to be the beginning of the perfect life I had imagined. Instead, it became the catalyst for something more valuable. A life built on truth rather than illusion, on earned trust rather than obligatory loyalty. When I look in the mirror now, I no longer see the naive young woman who once believed in her family's perfect facade. I see someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, someone who understands that true love, whether in families or marriages, must be built on honesty rather than convenience or calculation. And that, I've come to believe, is worth far more than any car, any status symbol, or any false perfection could ever be. As I close this chapter of my life story, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a family betrayal that ultimately led to growth? Did you find forgiveness possible, or did you need to create distance to protect yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story of family karma and hard-won wisdom resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life stories of betrayal and redemption, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes. The most painful revelations lead to the most authentic lives. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to healing. May your own path to authentic family relationships be less painful than mine was.